With a shout, people threw their arms up and cheered because they had finally arrived in New York, the city of dreams. At that time, the United States was developing rapidly and was known as a land paved with gold and opportunities, so people flocked from all over the world, unable to wait to realize their dreams of getting rich. The moment the cruise ship docked at the other shore, the passengers rushed off the ship. Only a boilerman named Danny lingered unhurriedly in the first-class cabin. He tried to pick up treasures left behind by the rich, but unexpectedly found a surprise on the piano.
What in the scuts you doing here?
A child inside a fruit crate. The entire hall was empty, and with only the words T.D. lemons on the box, it was clearly an abandoned baby. Danny didn't turn a blind eye. He decided to adopt this poor child. His fellow workers asserted that some immigrant must have given birth secretly at night and left the child in first class when disembarking, hoping a rich person would find him and give him a good life. As it turned out, the one who picked up the baby was a poor, black boiler man. Danny ignored their teasing and gave the boy a special name.
I found him the first month of the first year of this friggin' new century. So I calls him 1900!
1900 had neither parents nor a birthday, not even a decent cradle, only a group of boilermen surrounding him. Lying on the machinery that pushed the entire cruise ship forward, 1900 grew up little by little just like that. Because he had no birth certificate or passport, Danny was afraid 1900 would be taken away by others, so 1900 spent most of his childhood hiding in the bottom of the SS Virginian. Well, he had no playmates. Before his eyes were only the surging seawater and the giant cradle that carried him. Danny didn't know many words, but he would still teach 1900 how to read the newspaper in his free time before bed. 1900 always made Danny laugh heartily, while also asking many questions.
What's a mama, Danny?
A mama?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a mama's a horse.
A horse?
A racehorse. Matter of fact, you know what I say? A mama's the best horse in the world, thoroughbred.
Every day when sleeping, Danny would tell 1900 that everything outside the cruise ship was bad and that there were big sharks on land that specialized in eating children. Danny protected 1900 in this way, and in this extraordinary floating city on the sea. Apart from his father, 1900's family members were all special people. For example, the doctor in the clinic, the chefs in the back, and the waiters. Everyone took care of 1900, and everyone wanted to give him what they considered a good education. Finally, even Captain Smith joined this big family in his own way. Whenever 1900 made a mistake, Captain Smith would appear on time with a dark face.
1900? How many times have I told you never to come up here, especially if it's to steal?
However, every time 1900 was fearless and would strike back in his own way.
Strike! Mr. Danny! Madness, orphan nonsense must come to an end! In any case, it's even against the law!
Storms were often encountered during sea voyages. 1900 would hide in his room and wait quietly every time, while Danny still had to continue working, and bad luck always descends suddenly. Because of the violent shaking, a large iron hook fell down and struck Danny below. He collapsed to the ground immediately, blood spilling from his mouth. Miraculously, even after being hit hard on the back of the head, Danny still held on. 1900 read the newspaper to Danny with tears in his eyes, and Danny would still let out hearty laughter, thought it would just be a false alarm, but unfortunately, 3 days later, Danny left this world forever. The doctor asserted that if Danny hadn't laughed so hard on the hospital bed, there might have been a possibility of survival. It's just that there aren't that many ifs in life. Everyone held a funeral for Danny, and 1900 became an orphan again. That year he had just turned 8. It was also at this time that 1900 heard melodious sounds drifting from the distance.
Music.
For the first time, 1900 knew there was a sound called music. He looked back at Danny. Danny floated on the sea all his life, and after death, his body was returned to the sea. The sea was Danny's hometown, and it was also 1900's hometown. After Danny left, 1900 looked at the land countless times, feeling deep loneliness. But 1900 never left this ship because, for the whole world, he simply didn't exist. And that sound called music surrounded 1900's mind all the time, guiding 1900's to leave the dirty boiler room and climb higher and higher. Passing through corridors he had never set foot in, 1900 saw a brand new world where people were beautifully dressed, singing and dancing, clearly on the same ship, yet it seemed to be in a completely opposite time and space from the boilerman. And in the center of the dance floor stood a piano. It was the source of the music. Because he had no guardian, 1900 was targeted by relevant agencies and had to be sent to an orphanage. Captain Smith, under pressure, could only allow a search, but he left a small listening tube on the wall, which gave 1900 time to hide. So when the inspectors entered the cruise ship, no matter how they searched, they couldn't find even a shadow of 1900. For a full 22 days, 1900 was not found, and no one knew any news of him. Everyone felt very heavy in their hearts, as if they had lost their own child, although none of them admitted it. Until one day, on the night the SS Virginian set sail again, a sailor hurriedly woke Captain Smith up.
We're sinking! We're sinking!
Worse! Much worse!
The crowd gathered in the hall following the notes, only to see 1900 sitting quietly at the piano playing a melody people had never heard before. At this moment, Captain Smith had many questions rushing to his lips, such as where 1900 learned the piano, or where he had hidden for so long, or even curiosity about what kind of melody this was. But under everyone's gaze, Captain Smith just said,
1900? All of this is entirely against the regulations.
The regulations.
1900 thus remained on the SS Virginian, and his miraculous deeds spread far and wide. Many people boarded this cruise ship admiringly, just to hear 1900's performance. In 1924, a trumpet player full of musical dreams boarded the ship. Max really wanted to meet that ocean pianist, but a storm soon taught him a lesson. Max, boarding the ship for the first time, was staggering and couldn't even stand steadily. He regretted it before it even started, and finally found a bucket to vomit frantically into. Just then, a man walked up to him.
Hey, Colin. What's the matter? Lose your sea legs? You're the new trumpet man, aren't you? You blow a con. Come with me. I've got a cure for your misery.
The man was strange. He didn't ask for Max's name, but addressed him by the brand of trumpet Max used. The storm clearly made the ship rock left and right, and normal people couldn't move smoothly at all. But the man seemed unaffected, swaggering towards the center of the dance floor just like that. With doubts, Max followed. The man sat directly at the piano and then asked Max to unlock the wheel locks securing the piano. Max firmly believed that the guy in front of him must be a lunatic. Without wheel locks, the piano would crash into pieces.
Hop on next to me.
What are you, some kind of nutcase?
You better get on now or you never will.
Max had no choice but to climb onto the piano with difficulty. At the same time, that was the most unforgettable night of Max's life. The man had no fear, relaxed and at ease, controlling all the rhythms as if this storm had risen for him. Max suddenly realized they were dancing with the sea, placed in the golden hall under the night curtain, immersed in a cheerful waltz. Perfect, crazy dancers. Until the piano piece came to an end, the piano carried the two of them rushing all the way, finally crashing directly into the captain's quarters. And the man who was just dashing and at ease instantly became like a child in front of Captain Smith.
1900! I should have known it was you! Who else in the ship could do anything as lunatic as this besides you, 1900?
What surprised Max even more was that after making a mistake, the two were only punished to shovel coal. At the same time, he understood this guy named 1900 better.
You know, ever since I came on board, I've been hearing a lot of talk about a guy. First off,
Suddenly he realized that this man was the rumored ocean pianist, the pianist who had never left the ship for over 20 years. Most of the time, 1900 played in the first-class cabin. He would often disrupt the originally regular notes, turning the ballroom into a carnival party. The rich liked this chaotic feeling, but only in the third-class cabin would 1900 play his own music. Here, people had no restraints and enjoyed the happiness brought by music to the fullest. Whenever this happened, although 1900's hands were on the keys, his heart had long left his body, left the cruise ship, and traveled all over the world. After getting off the ship, people would still talk about this strange musical journey and this ocean pianist who seemed to have 4 hands because he was so fast. Legends about 1900 varied and were numerous. Later, even a certain U.S. senator did not hesitate to come to the third-class cabin just to listen to 1900's music. It was just that when that cheer came, people would scatter like birds and beasts, leaving 1900 alone to taste loneliness.
Why did you stop? Please continue.
Sorry, Senator. We've made port. Only play on the open sea.
The senator suggested 1900 go on a tour on land to show his talent to the world. Otherwise, it would be a pity. But 1900 thought he was showing his talent to people every day, just in his own way. Max was equally curious why 1900 didn't get off the ship to take a look, even if only once. Rather than spending all day lost in fantasies, it's better to see the world with your own eyes. With 1900's ability, he could definitely earn big money, live in the best mansion, and then have the woman everyone envied, as long as he was willing to get off the ship.
God knows you can't spend the rest of your life traveling back and forth like some yo-yo. The world is out there. Nothing but a gangplank to cross. And what's a gangplank? A few stupid steps. Christ, everything is waiting at the bottom of those steps.
Why? I think land people waste a lot of time wondering why. Winter comes and you can't wait for summer. Summer comes and you live in dread of winter. That's why we never tire of traveling, always chasing some place far away where it's always summer. Doesn't sound like a good bet to me.
1900 had his own ideas. He only wanted a life that belonged to him. That night, 1900 played alone as usual, but suddenly the sound of an accordion came from the darkness. A plainly dressed old man greeted him. He heard the loneliness and desolation in 1900's music. 1900 saw at a glance that the old man was different from other passengers and didn't seem so excited about going to America. It turned out the old man used to be a farmer, and once the whole world to him was just that piece of land. At that time, although his life was narrow, he was happy because he was content. But later, due to natural disasters, the fields dried up. His wife ran away with someone else, and his 5 children were taken by fever. He was forced to leave that land, wandering around, heading to a bigger world to struggle. Because he still had a little daughter, for her, he was willing to fight bad luck to the end.
And then one day, when I go through one of the many towns I never see before, I come to a hill. And then I see the most beautiful thing in my life. The sea.
The sea?
I never see it before. It was like lightning hit me, because I hear the voice.
The voice of the sea?
Yes, the voice of the sea. It is like a shout big and strong, screaming and screaming. And the thing it was screaming was, you, life is immense. Can you understand that? Immense.
After seeing the breadth of the sea, the old man was no longer the narrow-minded farmer of the past. He decided to start from scratch and look for infinite possibilities in life. These words plunged 1900 into deep thought. Over the years, although he had never set foot on land, he had long read countless people on the ship. With just one glance, he could tell the other person's identity and experience, and even everything about their past. It was just that when the ship docked, he became alone again, and the prosperity in the distance had nothing to do with him. Perhaps because of the farmer's words, 1900 had a whim. He found a phone book and started calling people on land randomly, but only received abusive words in return.
I think there's been a misunderstanding here.
You'll take your misunderstanding and shove it.
So I know that the phone doesn't always bring out the best in people.
You keep this up and I swear I'll come over there and bring out the best in you with your guts still attached. You think I don't know who you are?
As a result, the next second, someone really came looking for him, and 1900 turned and ran away immediately. He thought he would be caught and beaten up, but he didn't expect the other party was just coming to pass a message. The founder of jazz wanted to challenge 1900 to a piano duel. It turned out that the rumors of the ocean pianist spread further and further, and some even called his music a miracle. This made Morton, the self-proclaimed founder of jazz, jealous, and he determined to meet this pianist who never went ashore. But 1900 didn't understand the meaning of a duel at all. He was just curious about it. He had never competed with anyone. 1900 reached out to be friendly, but Morton chose to ignore it.
Excusez-moi, s'il vous plaît.
Looking at Morton's big yellow teeth set with diamonds, 1900 suddenly felt very awkward, so he had to step aside first, completely unaware of the smell of gunpowder in the air. And after Morton placed a lit cigarette on the piano, he began his performance. It is said that Morton made his fortune in red light districts and once lived a very hard life, but his hands played as softly as butterflies, like stroking a graceful body, soothing the emotions of the guests upstairs without disturbing anyone's rest. This was Morton's style, and in this regard, he was unrivaled. When the cigarette was about to burn out, Morton's debut was just finished, and the audience immediately burst into thunderous applause. Morton held up the cigarette and walked up to 1900. This was a silent provocation.
Your turn. Sail.
This instantly made 1900 somewhat at a loss. He didn't know what he should play. After a brief moment of hesitation, in such a solemn setting, 1900 began to play the Christmas song, completely absorbed, paying no mind at all to the audience's murmurs of disapproval. He finished the performance in less than a minute. Morton felt he had been greatly insulted, so without saying a word, he immediately started the second round of the contest. Morton obviously came prepared and constantly added superb improvisations. Although the piano piece appeared cheerful on the surface, it hid the bitterness of his early struggles, which was a desire to stand out. Morton's emotions rose higher and higher, and the audience on the scene who understood the meaning burst into tears. This made Max unable to watch because he had bet a year's salary on 1900.
What is wrong with you? I can't help it.
After the piano piece ended, there was also thunderous applause, and 1900 stood up to pay his respects. He admired the emotion Morton poured into it, so he responded immediately. Morton simply couldn't believe his ears. Most of the melody just now was improvisation, but 1900 replicated it perfectly after listening only once and even added his own understanding to it. Obviously, 1900 heard the emotion Morton poured into it, although the audience below thought 1900 was just imitating Morton. After 1900 finished playing, the audience erupted in murmurs of disappointment. Morton saw that 1900 might have some strength, but being despised again and again, he finally couldn't bear it anymore. He wanted to end this competition completely.
You stick this up your ass.
This time, Morton brought out everything he had learned in his life, and at the same time abandoned all emotions. The rhythm of the piano piece was extremely fast, and every note won with technique. Obviously, Morton was purely showing off his strength. This made 1900 suddenly realize that he and Morton were not from the same world at all. Piano without emotion could not be considered a performance, and the so-called challenge was to try one's best to make the other party lose face completely. 1900 didn't like this, so after Morton's performance ended, he also decided to get serious. He borrowed a cigarette from Max, held it high to show everyone like Morton did, and then also placed it on the piano, but he didn't light it. Morton had already popped the champagne when he suddenly heard 1900 say to him from behind,
You asked for it, asshole.
Beads of sweat the size of beans slid down 1900's cheeks. Under such full power, the audience present all held their breath. The piano piece clearly required 4 hands to play, but 1900 could do it alone. Morton tried to keep up with the rhythm with his fingers, but found that he simply couldn't do it. The champagne shattered into pieces along with Morton's arrogance. The afterimage of 4 hands overturned people's cognition. Who was strong and who was weak was judged instantly. When 1900 finished playing, everyone present fell into complete silence, still immersed in the moment and unable to react. 1900 said nothing. He simply picked up the cigarette resting on the piano, and the instant it touched the strings, the cigarette was lit. 1901.
You smoke it. I don't know how.
Max witnessed this historic moment, and 1900 was surrounded by everyone, enjoying the fruits of victory. And Morton lost thoroughly. He didn't lose any disdain, but lost to his own arrogance, lost to the self who once loved music. In the time that followed, Morton locked himself in his room until the cruise ship docked. and left in a hurry. 1900 said a single line to Morton.
Jazz, too.
After becoming famous in one battle, a record company also found 1900. To record a handed-down golden song of 1900, the record company did not hesitate to move the recorder onto the cruise ship because 1900 never got off the ship. 1900 didn't know what he should play either, just put his hands on the keys. Then he saw a girl as pure and kind as a dandelion. The girl tidied her appearance against the window, completely unaware of 1900's obsessed gaze in the room. In those azure eyes, 1900 seemed to see the sea mentioned by the farmer. Following the melody jumping on the piano, Max understood 1900's mind. However, the girl left after pausing for a moment, and 1900's music came to an abrupt halt. The record company was very satisfied, and was even considering how to name the song on the spot. Listening to the sound in the record, 1900 regretted it. He didn't want to play for 10,000 people. He wanted to give his music exclusively to one person. So he took the record. He wanted to give it to that girl. The girl seemed to have no one to rely on, and men whistled at her. But clearly being so close to the girl, 1900 didn't dare to speak. He had never been so shy. The flower of love had quietly blossomed.
Miss, I'd be pleased if...
1900 practiced many times in front of the mirror just to give the record to the girl. He was so green. No one had ever taught him how to face love, but the girl attracted him all the time. Finally, on a rainy day, the girl stood alone on the deck. This was 1900 good chance. The girl also noticed this somewhat strange guy. The moment their eyes met, they both subconsciously chose to avoid it. Looking at the record in his hand, 1900 still didn't know how to speak. And when he finally summoned up the courage to approach, several ill-intentioned guys surrounded the girl. They mocked the girl as a peasant, saying peasants never dared to look at the sea.
That's not true. Once, my father told me he had the ocean's voice.
Sometimes the world is just that narrow. The girl was actually the daughter the farmer mentioned.
What did it say?
I can't tell you, and secrets should be kept.
The rain got heavier and heavier, and the girl also went into the room, leaving only 1900 stunned in place. He still never gave the record away. Perhaps everything was caused by longing. That night, 1900 actually entered the women's dormitory as if possessed. He found the girl, and then couldn't help but kiss her. The girl in her sleep was obviously aware, and 1900 turned and ran away immediately. Without giving 1900 more time, the next day the cruise ship was about to dock again. Looking at the bustling crowd, 1900 knew that if he missed it again, he might never have a chance. 1900 told the girl that he had cooperated with her father on the ship a few years ago.
But how did you know who I was? It's very strange, no?
Well, it's a secret. And secrets should be kept.
The girl didn't know how to answer 1900, so she left a kiss on his cheek, and 1900 was stunned in place instantly. And as the flow of people pushed the girl further and further away, 1900 finally reacted.
Please accept this small musical token.
I'm sorry, but I can't hear you.
I want you to accept this small token.
I can't hear you.
O'Malley. Okay. Good luck.
Thank you. Good luck to you too.
Like everyone else, 1900 failed to say what should be said, but was exceptionally loud when saying goodbye. Before parting, the girl left an address. She hoped he could come to find her when he had time. Just like that, 1900 watched the girl get off the ship while the record was still in his hand. 1900 did not return the record to the record company, but broke it into several pieces and threw them all into the trash can. In the days that followed, 1900 never mentioned that girl, and Max never asked. 1900 seemed to have turned back into his once carefree self. Only on a certain spring night, 1900 suddenly said to Max,
3 days when we get to New York, I'm getting off the ship.
Max simply couldn't believe it. 1900 would suddenly say such a thing. 1900 said he wanted to get off the ship to see the sea and hear the sound of the sea. This made Max unable to help laughing. 1900 was born on the sea, so why go to land to see the sea? But what 1900 wanted to see was the sea, mentioned by the farmer, the kind of infinite life shouted by the sea. Once heard, one would know how to spend the rest of one's life. If he stayed where he was, he would never see the sea. But after going ashore, perhaps in just a few years, 1900 would become mediocre, becoming like everyone else. Max thought there was nothing wrong with this, marrying and having children. a stable life. Even if one couldn't live exactly as one imagined, and might even gradually lose oneself, it was all worth trying.
You'll come visit me, won't you, Max?
Of course. Why, you'll introduce me to the mother of your children and invite me for Sunday dinner. I'll bring the dessert and a bottle of wine, and you'll tell me I shouldn't have. And while you're showing me around your house, shaped like a ship, your wife will be cooking a turkey. And then we'll sit at the table. I'll tell her she's an excellent cook. And she'll say how you talk about me all the time.
Listening to Max's description, 1900 could fully feel the happiness of that time. Max gave his overcoat to 1900, and everyone said goodbye to him one by one, including Captain Smith, whose hair was already gray. Although they all said see you later, everyone knew that this parting might mean never seeing each other again. 1900 never thought that he actually stepped onto the stairs. As far as the eye could see, tall buildings stood in great numbers. Thick smoke billowed. It was a rapidly developing industrialized city, and 1900 seemed to hear the noise and complexity within it, seeing no end at a glance. No one knew what 1900 was thinking. He never took another step forward. Immediately, a relieved smile appeared on his face, and with a wave of his hand, he threw his hat out, and the hat landed on the sea. Finally, 1900 made his own choice. He turned and went back to the ship, deciding never to get off the ship. Also from that day on, 1900 sat in front of the piano all his life, playing his most whimsical music with the keys. This music could best verify the rest of his life. As he played, Max was in tears because he was about to leave. In 1933, Max left the SS Virginian. He decided to return to land to continue pursuing his dreams, and since then, Max never heard news of the cruise ship in 1900 again. It was just a pity that reality didn't give Max what he wanted. Although many years passed, Max failed to realize his dream and even fell to the point of selling his trumpet. What he never expected was that he found the record 1900 had thrown into the trash here, now restored and hidden away in the antique store. Max couldn't help but tell the story about 1900. What surprised him even more was that even the piano was placed aside. The shopkeeper told Max that the SS Virginian was now about to be scrapped, and people would destroy it in a few days. Max immediately came to the pier. The once majestic cruise ship was now rusty, and tons of explosives were moved onto the ship batch by batch. But the only thing Max could be sure of was that 1900 was definitely still on the ship, so he told the story to the staff. The manager was moved and decided to give Max one day to search. But Max searched every corner and didn't find 1900's voice. 1900 disappeared just like when he was a child. No one knew where he was hiding, but tomorrow the cruise ship would be blown up. Max had no choice but to sneak into that music store under the cover of night, intending to use that record to lure 1900 out. Unexpectedly, he was caught red-handed by the shopkeeper. But the story of the ocean pianist seemed to possess magic. People who heard it would be moved by it. Upon learning the whole process, the shopkeeper agreed to lend the record to Max. Just like that, on the eve of the cruise ship being blown up, a desolate trumpet player took a broken record to look for the ocean pianist who might not exist long ago. Max played it in every place where 1900 used to stay, over and over again, but until the sky was slightly bright, he couldn't see 1900's shadow. Maybe 1900 really got off the ship for that girl. Just as Max was about to leave, he seemed to glimpse something.
Hey, Khan. What's the matter? You lose your sea legs?
1900 really didn't get off the ship. He addressed him by the trumpet brand just like when he first saw Max. 1900 had been playing the piano on the ship all these years, even if war broke out outside, even if no one danced anymore, even if bombs fell from the sky. Max persuaded 1900 to get off the ship. They could form a band together and look for a better life. But 1900's eyes were still as sharp as before. He saw that Max's trumpet was gone.
It wasn't what I saw that stopped me, Max. It was what I didn't see. You understand that? You take a piano. Keys begin, keys end. You know there are 88 of them. Nobody can tell you any different. They are not infinite. You are infinite. And on those keys, the music that you can make is infinite. I like that. That I can live by.
But the outside world was a huge piano to 1900, with countless keys on it. That was not prepared for mortals. That was God's piano. 1900 couldn't play such a piano. There were too many problems on shore, and he couldn't see the end. 1900 was born on the ship and the world constantly passed by him, but only 2,000 people at a time. There were also dreams here, but they started from the bow and never exceeded the stern.
Land? Land is a ship too big for me. It's a woman too beautiful. It's a voyage too long. Perfume too strong. It's music I don't know how to make. I could never get off this ship.
Like most young people, 1900 once stood on the gangplank, filled with longing, yet was unwilling to take another step forward. Because he couldn't see the future, but also saw the future. Max burst into tears after listening. He knew that 1900 would forever live only in his ideal kingdom. They hugged tightly. This was the never seeing each other again between best friends. In the last moment of life, 1900 raised his hands. The notes had long merged into his blood. Even without a piano, he could still play the movement of his life. With a burst of violent firelight, a generation of genius ended here. The shopkeeper also felt regret after hearing the news. Before parting, he returned the trumpet to Max. Compared to him, the current Max needed the Kahn brand more. This is a story belonging to a genius. 19th century music can always make people dream. At the same time, 1900 was extremely far-sighted. He looked through and saw that the land was just an SS Virginian with no end in sight, where there were infinite, uncontrollable unknowns. So 1900 was afraid. He was not afraid of what he saw, but what he couldn't see. So 1900 didn't get off the ship. His cowardly reality at that moment was just like us in front of the screen. And although we are not geniuses, we also need stories about geniuses, because that is everyone's concretization of a better life. 1900 failed to get off the ship, and what he didn't get off was not just the ship, but the piece of small world in his heart that no one could know, peaceful and beautiful, which is also the small world of all of us. Time is like a running train. When it pulls you to become mature and reality slowly connects with you, will you choose to get off the ship? And obviously, we must get off the ship, and we have already got off the ship long ago, coming to this society with heavy traffic and exploded information volume. With friends, family, and colleagues around, you can never just look after yourself, unless you are willing to taste permanent loneliness. Max and 1900 represent the real and ideal worlds, respectively. The ideal self cannot get off the ship and can only be on the ship. The ideal cannot survive in reality, so 1900 can only be destroyed along with the cruise ship, but that was in the movie. None of us can be as flawless as 1900. Even if reality and ideals cannot coexist, when life pressures you to the point where you can't breathe, please do not sell your own Kahn trumpet, because I believe that as long as it is still there, we can always blow it in the gasp, and then secretly return alone to that small world that no one can disturb, forever peaceful and happy. As long as you are willing, life cannot destroy it, because it belongs only to you.